Hey everyone. Hey, just wanted to do a little. You guys watched the introduction video to integers and answered some questions. We're just going to dive a little bit deeper into that now. Um, so if you remember from class, we got into integers just a little bit. The definition of integers is that they are whole numbers. So whole numbers being 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. And then they're also the opposites of whole numbers. So where 1 is a whole number, one's opposite is -1. So -1 is also an integer. Now, it's important to understand that negative numbers are not whole numbers. Negative numbers are the opposites of whole numbers. And well, not all negative numbers are opposites of whole numbers, but if you find a negative number that's the opposite of a whole number, then both numbers are integers. So negative numbers go to the left of 0 on the number line, and positive numbers go to the right of 0 on a number line. So we're used to thinking of 0 as being as meaning nothing in math, right? We're used to it as meaning as a symbol we use to represent the quantity of nothing, right? Having nothing. But on a number line, and in lots of different examples in the real world, 0 also has another meaning, and that is it's the middle. It's the amount that separates positive and negative numbers. 0 is also an integer, but it is not. 0 isn't negative or positive. It's just 0. So it's kind of its own little animal there. But it's not. 0 is not a negative number. 0 is not a positive number. But it is an integer. 0 is also not a whole number. Decimals and fractions are not integers because decimals and fractions are not whole numbers. And if you remember, the definition of an integer is it's all of the whole numbers and their opposites. So you might ask, well, why is 0 an integer if it's not a whole number? 0 is an integer because it is its own opposite. Don't ask me why. I didn't invent 0, but that's just the way it's categorized. So which of the following numbers are integers? 17, 120, I don't know, 120,945, 80.5, -695, 0, 2 3/4, or 99, or -0.9. So I'll give you just a second to go ahead and answer which one of those you believe are integers. Okay, so again, from our definition, integers are whole numbers. So let's just start with that. 17 is a whole number, so that would be an integer. 120,945 is a whole number, so that would be an integer. 80.5 is not a whole number because we've got this 0.5, so that would not be an integer. -695 is not a whole number, but it is the opposite of a whole number. The opposite of this whole number would be 695. So this is an integer. 0 is an integer, as it says up here. 2 3/4 is not an integer because even though we have this whole number part right here, it's attached to a fraction. So 2 3/4 would not be an integer. 99 is a whole number, so that's an integer. And -0.9 is a decimal, so that would not be an integer. So each integer has an opposite on the other side of 0. So the opposite of 4 would be -4. The opposite of 5 would be -5. 6, negative 6, and so on. So what would the opposite of 620,000, 620,050? So that would be negative 620,050. What is the, so this is where, and we don't really need to get into this too much, but if the opposite of a positive whole number is that same negative number, so if the opposite of 6 is negative 6, then what would the opposite of negative 6 be? I'll say that again. So if the opposite of 6 is negative 6, what would the opposite of negative 6 be? The opposite of negative 6 would be 6, right? So what would the opposite of 620,050 be? So the opposite of 620,050 would be negative 620,050. And then the opposite of negative 620,050 would be 620,050. Kind of confusing, I know, but you don't have to worry too much about that. Okay. Let's see. Sorry, let me just back up here a second. All right, which number is the largest, negative 10 or negative 4? Think about that. Which number is the largest, negative 10 or negative 4? So if we pull up a number line here, numbers that go to the right on a number line are always larger. So since negative 4 is to the right of negative 10, then negative 4 is larger. And that can be a little bit confusing at first because you're used to seeing 10 and you're thinking, well, 10 is bigger than 4, which is true. 10 is bigger than 4, but that's positive 10 is bigger than positive 4. If you think about temperature, negative 4 degrees and negative 10 degrees, which one is colder? Well, negative 10 degrees is colder. So that would be the lower number. It's a little bit confusing at first, but the more you practice with it, the more you become familiar. So which of these numbers is the smallest? Negative 1, negative 687, negative 46, negative 1,850, negative 360, negative 12. Okay, so again, think about on a number line, which one is further to the left. So which one is further to the left? So on a number line, the one that's going to be the furthest to the left is negative 1,850. So that means it's the smallest because it's the furthest one on the left. The next smallest one would be negative 687 because that's the only one that's to the right of 1,000, or excuse me, that's the only one that is, negative 1,850 is the only one that's smaller or lower than negative 687. So go ahead and think about which numbers, how you would order the rest of these from smallest to greatest. Okay, so we should have negative 1,850 is the smallest, and then negative 687 is the next smallest, and then negative 360, negative 46, negative 12, and negative 1 would be the largest number in all of these numbers. So this is a fun little game that that you can play. Find a path from the left to the right in ascending order. So, all right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to look and see how would we go from left to right with the number on the left being the smallest and the number on the right being the greatest. So I'm going to start with, let's see if I can do -7. So a number that's bigger than -7 is -5, but then we go to back to -7, so that's not going to work. So how about we try -8? So -8 to -6. So -8 is smaller than -6. -6 is smaller than -4. -4 is smaller than -2. -2 is smaller than -1. -1 is smaller than 0. And 0 is smaller than 2. So kind of a fun little game there. Whoop. Just trying to use the pen. Here we go. So this is the path that we would go for that one. All right. So compare these temperatures in Europe. So we've got in Glasgow, it's -3 degrees Celsius. In Oslo, -11 degrees Celsius. So between these two, which one would be colder? Well, so -11 is to the left of -3 on a number line. So -11 would be colder. So right now I'm going to have you go ahead and say which location has the warmest temperature and which location has the coldest temperature. All right, so if we go to our thermometer here, we look and see that our coldest temperature is going to be -18. So here's 0 on the thermometer, and -18 would be 15, 16, 17, 18. So -18 would be right about there. Then we have -16, which would be right there. And then we have -11, should be there. Then let's see, then we have -5 and -3 and 0 and so on. Okay, so that just kind of helps you get a visual of what the negative numbers look like on a thermometer. Okay, so let's look at this problem. Taylor has -$5 in her lunch account at the start of the week. So she spent everything she had on her lunch account, and she now owes $5. She can only buy lunch if her account balance is positive. Sorry, I thought this was going to be a problem, so this actually wasn't a problem on here. Okay, so we're going to do a little quiz. All right, so the question is, which of these is an integer? Which of these is an integer? Okay, so 42.05 is, it has a decimal. So that can't be an integer because integers are whole numbers and they're opposites. So we're going to do negative 4,200 is an integer. Yay! That's the only basketball you'll see this March, unfortunately. Okay, what is the opposite of 20? So the opposite of 20 on a number line is negative 20. The opposite of 20 is negative 20. What is the opposite of 0? So 0 is its own opposite. So there's no such thing as negative 0. So the opposite of 0 is just 0. What is the opposite of 100? So the opposite of 100 is negative 100, and then the opposite of that would be 100. Which of these is correct? So this is a little bit trickier one, so think about this on a number line. Negative or minus, sorry. Okay, we're not going to